That was Fox and Friends and Steve Doocy interviewing Devin Nunes of the House Intel Committee, saying that we believe that Glenn Simpson's testimony that there was a mole within the Trump campaign. And if the Trump campaign was set up, well, that would be a problem. And then he talked about he has a problem with a counterintelligence operation of a political party and how rare that would be. Now, a lot of this got started thanks to the Wall Street Journal's Kimberley Strassel, who's a great reporter, columnist, and the headline of this article was, did the FBI place a mole inside the 2016 Trump campain? Now, Kimberley Strassel joins us now. Kimberly, how are you? You've been doing amazing work.
Hi, Sean.
You've been doing really amazing work. I really applaud you. This is a big part of the story, especially in light of all the FISA abuse, unmasking abuse, and a lot of other issues that I think every American should be concerned about because it raises constitutional questions. Was there a mole inside the 2016 Trump campaign?
Well, it sounds as though there's very good reason to believe so. Listen to Mr. Nunes, and I think it's very telling, Sean, when he sent over that classified letter and his subpoena to the Justice Department and said, tell me everything you know about this person. The easy answer for the Department of Justice would have been, we don't have anything on that person. But that's, of course, not what they said. Instead, they got into another round of intense obstructionism, saying we are not going to hand over anything to do with this person. And then somebody over there leaked to the Washington Post a whole bunch of details about it to try to make their case. And as a result, we've learned a lot more that, in fact, they are protecting a top secret intelligence source, probably someone with some overseas connections to intelligence agencies, and somebody who was clearly involved in the collusion probe. And you and I know when people talk about sources, they're not talking about internal FBI agents. They're talking about people who sit outside. They pose as average citizens, but they use their positions or their credentials or their job to then spy on people and report back to their taskmaster.
And in this particular case, that would have been inside the Trump campaign.
Well, either inside or more likely, if the person is who I suspect it is, somebody who interacted with Trump campaign officials.
Well, let me ask you this. Would it be initials that I personally would be familiar with?
That's an interesting question, and I neither confirm nor deny. But look, there's a lot of names out there. I think a lot of people have done a lot of very good reporting since mine. I'm not going out with a name because I haven't had it officially confirmed.
No, by the way, we respect you for that, but you know, I guess we all have our own sources here, and we're probably all hearing the same thing. Although it's obvious that you've done a lot. You did a very deep dive into all of this. I want to talk about what you called intense obstructionism. And what you're really discussing here is the Department of Justice, their slow walking of subpoenaed documents by Congress. Congress, we have a checks and balance system, co-equal branches of government. They have constitutional oversight authority, and they have been extremely uncooperative as it relates to turning over these subpoenaed documents. Slow walking is one method. Redactions in the name of national security that turn out not to be national security issues later. In one case, that was Jim Comey. It was redacted that he had believed General Flynn. That's not a national security issue. That's an embarrassment issue for them. But that's what they said was the reason why they had redacted it. And the other thing is just outright not cooperating in any way, shape, manner, or form and saying no. It seems to now be hitting a very critical point. What are Congress's options here, I guess, besides holding Sessions and Rosenstein in contempt of Congress?
Well, it can be no coincidence, Sean, that about the time that letter that Nunes sent went over there, suddenly we saw the pushback kicked up about 10 notches. Up until then, the Department of Justice, they'd slow-walked things, as you said. They'd not been responsive, they'd redacted. But we saw an all-out campaign. This is when we suddenly got Rod Rosenstein accusing Congress of extortion and giving speeches out to law schools about how how the Department of Justice has a constitutional duty to not let Congress look at these documents. So they clearly, Devin Nunes is over the target, and there is something very embarrassing for the FBI here that they do not want to have come out. But look, there's going to be another meeting this week between Congressman Nunes and Gowdy and the Department of Justice. If they don't get to see what they have demanded to see, I think the House has to move immediately to contempt, and maybe even hold out the prospect of impeachment. These are the tools that were given to them to require the opposing branches of government to conform to constitutional requirements, and they may have to go down that road.
And the Freedom Caucus in particular has already drawn up articles of impeachment as it relates to Rod Rosenstein, and I have a question about him. I've always viewed him as a very conflicted person in all of this. We would never have gotten the Nunes memo because Rod Rosenstein, again, they slow walked it up to the midnight hour of the day that they were mandated to release this information. And he was inside of the Speaker Paul Ryan's office begging that Paul Ryan not turn over the information that ultimately became the Nunes memo that literally made us all aware of massive FISA abuses. And then the Grassley-Graham memo subsequently telling us as well that the bulk of the application for the FISA warrant to spy on the Trump campaign came from the uncorroborated, unverified dossier of a foreign agent, Christopher Steele, that Hillary Clinton paid for, that cites Russians and a lot of Russian sources that have been debunked. So my question about Rod is, Rod signed off on one of those FISA warrants, one of the subsequent warrants. Rod Rosenstein would be, witness number one as to was there obstruction when President Trump fired Comey, and Rod Rosenstein is the guy that's leading the way and slow walking everything. Yet he's in the most powerful position in this case.
Correct. And this is why, look, I've argued all along that Donald Trump simply needs to declassify all of this information, because those who are currently sitting at the stranglehold of this and deciding what gets released and what does not are all conflicted in some degree. Look, people are trying to protect the Department of Justice and the FBI's reputation, which may be a knee-jerk reaction and something an institutionalist would do, but that is not helping us get to the bottom of this question. And because look, too, it goes even beyond, I think, what you very eloquently laid out, which is that Rod Rosenstein was a guy who created, as it were, special counsel Bob Mueller. Now, if it comes out that the FBI was far more complicit if they set people up, as Devin Nunes said, then this entire thing is a house of cards. There never should have been any reason to have appointed special counsel Mueller. How much did Rod Rosenstein know about that and this secret source and what went on in the FBI? This thing could really be, I think, quite explosive if and when they finally get the information they're seeking.
All right, we'll take a break. We'll come back more with the Wall Street Journal's Kimberley Strassel. All right, as we continue with Kimberley Strassel, she's with the Wall Street Journal. And did we have an FBI mole inside of the Trump campaign? I was a little shocked at the report last week that we didn't know the extent to which Comey had met with the special counsel, Robert Mueller, and seemingly coordinating their stories. Now, why do I believe let's say you had two mob guys that were under investigation and they meet at some particular point and they're talking for a long period of time and one of them goes in to testify, doesn't it look a lot like they're coordinating stories? I thought the appearance of that was beyond every ethical line that I think never should be crossed.
Yeah, the dumbest moment I've decided of my thinking last year, and I have plenty of dumb moments, Sean, but I've decided...
No, Kim, I'm a talk show host. Nobody has dumber moments than talk show hosts. Trust me.
But my all-time dumb moment was last May when special counsel Mueller was appointed, and I actually thought for a brief second that perhaps he was, as part of his investigation, going to look into what the FBI did. I think now in retrospect, we realize how ridiculous that is. He surrounded himself there by people who were involved in the Department of Justice, who had their own hands on that probe. He clearly is tight with, or certainly maintains respect respect for Jim Comey, and is certainly taking his view of everything that happened as just a non-negotiable. And, so he's not going to be a neutral arbiter in any way. And so we're also not going to get answers about what the FBI and Department of Justice did in 2016 from him. Again, going back to my point, the only way we get this in the end is for President Trump to either order it released or somehow put something in position, an outside person whose job it is to release these documents.
Let me ask you about Andy McCarthy. I think has been doing a great job, and he had a piece over
He's great.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think in the writing department, I mean, you guys have been amazing, and frankly, we've built our little team, and we got to add you guys to this team because the information you're both providing is it's like information overload every day. But he wrote about Simpson, the co-founder of Fusion GPS, and he wrote about the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing in August of 2017 that the former British intelligence officer Steele had told him that the FBI had this spy in the Trump campaign. Now, when you look at the spy in the Trump campaign, you look at the FISA warrants that were granted, on false information, unverified, uncorroborated, bought and paid for put together by a foreign national with Russian sources and lies. That didn't just happen one time. That had to be renewed every 3 months. There were 3 subsequent renewals. That is a full year of FISA judges being lied to and not told where the origins of this came from. I mean, to me, that is one of the biggest crimes in all of this if we believe in our Fourth Amendment rights and any constitutional rights at this point.
Well, think, too, not only was the court not told originally where the dossier came from, but we now know that Christopher Steele, its author, was fired by the FBI for deliberately breaking their rule, telling him, do not go and talk to the press. And not only did he hand off that dossier and then immediately go for a round of press briefings with Glenn Simpson out there, I mean, their goal was to get this out there and use it for nefarious political purposes and work against the presidential candidate, Donald Trump. So they were using the FBI for those purposes, their own political purposes. FBI finds out, fires Steele. They never went back in any of those subsequent FISA court applications and told them that their so-called credible source, which is what they referred to him in that FISA, had to be dismissed. How credible?
Well, they never told him that. And I think the most amazing part of James Comey's, let me pat myself on the back book tour, is that to this day, he doesn't have any clue if what was in the dossier is true. But as the Grassley-Graham memo points out, that was the bulk of the application to spy on a Trump campaign associate in the lead up to an election, paid for by an opposition party candidate.
If we're to believe him, Sean, given that book tour, he claims not to have known anything really about the source other than that he was credible. He claims not to have known that he was fired. He claims not to have known who paid for this in the end. I mean, at a certain point, this just strains credulity. The FBI is staging one of the most explosive counterintelligence probes in ever, and they're basing it on largely one document, and they claim to have done no follow-up whatsoever about the person who gave it to him, who paid him, what his motivations are, and what his subsequent actions were.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we have to take a break. We have to say goodbye. We're actually out of time. Kimberley Strassel, we're going to link this column to our website, Hannity.com. Keep up the good work, and we really appreciate your time, and thanks for being with us.
You too, Sean. Thank you.